The story of Flight 914 is one of those eerie aviation legends that has lingered for decades, blurring the line between fact and fiction. According to the tale, in 1955, a commercial aircraft known as Flight 914 departed from New York, bound for Miami. On board were 57 passengers and 4 crew members, expecting nothing more than a routine journey. Shortly after takeoff, however, the plane reportedly vanished from radar without any distress signal, mechanical warning, or communication from the cockpit. Search teams combed the skies and surrounding regions, but no wreckage, debris, or trace of the aircraft was ever found. It was as if the plane had simply dissolved into thin air, leaving behind grieving families and an unsolved mystery that faded into obscurity over time. Then, decades later, some versions of the story say 1985, the impossible allegedly happened. Air traffic controllers in Caracas, Venezuela, suddenly detected an unidentified aircraft entering their airspace. The pilot's voice crackled over the radio, confused and alarmed, asking for directions to Miami. When controllers informed him that he was nowhere near Florida and that the year was no longer 1955, panic reportedly filled the cockpit. Witnesses claim the plane landed briefly, and stunned ground staff saw a vintage aircraft matching the description of the long-lost Flight 914. Before anyone could properly approach it, the pilot, visibly shaken, is said to have shouted something about not coming closer. Moments later, the plane accelerated down the runway and took off again, disappearing into the sky just as mysteriously as it had first vanished, never to be seen again. Over time, the story has grown darker with added accounts and whispered details. Some versions claim that when the plane briefly landed, the passengers inside appeared frozen in time, wearing 1950s clothing, staring blankly, unaware that decades had passed. Others say the crew seemed terrified, as if they had glimpsed something beyond human understanding during their disappearance. There are even claims that one ground worker saw the interior of the plane through a window and noticed passengers who looked pale, unmoving, almost like lifeless figures rather than living people. More unsettling variations suggest that Flight 914 didn't just disappear. It may have slipped into some kind of temporal anomaly or alternate dimension. In these tellings, the passengers unknowingly experienced only a few hours, while nearly 30 years passed in the outside world. The horror lies not just in the disappearance, but in the idea that something went terribly wrong during that lost time, something the crew may have realized too late, prompting their frantic escape after landing. Despite how vivid and chilling the story is, there is no verified evidence that Flight 914 ever existed. Aviation records do not confirm such a flight, and no official documentation supports the events described. Most researchers trace the origin of the tale to tabloid publications known for sensational and fictionalized stories. Still, the legend persists because it taps into deep fears of the unknown, of lost time, and of forces beyond human control. Whether seen as a cautionary myth, a paranormal mystery, or simply an elaborate hoax, the story of Flight 914 continues to fascinate and unsettle. It lingers in that uncomfortable space where imagination and possibility meet, leaving people to wonder. If such a thing were possible, what truly happened during those missing years? In some retellings, the moment the aircraft allegedly landed in Caracas is described as deeply unnatural. Ground crew who approached the plane claimed there was an eerie silence around it. No normal engine hum, no chatter from passengers, just a strange stillness. When one worker reportedly looked through a cabin window, what they saw didn't feel right. The passengers inside were said to be sitting completely motionless, their faces expressionless, eyes fixed forward as if frozen in time. A few versions even suggest their skin looked unnaturally pale or gray, giving them an almost lifeless appearance, like wax figures posed in seats rather than living people. Another chilling variation claims that the crew, especially the pilot, behaved in a frantic and fearful way that didn't match simple confusion. Instead of relief at landing safely, the pilot allegedly reacted with panic when he realized something was wrong with time itself. Some stories say he shouted warnings at the ground staff not to approach, as if he knew something about the plane or what had happened during those missing years that others shouldn't come into contact with. This has led to speculation in the legend that whatever the aircraft experienced wasn't just a time slip, but something harmful or contaminating. One of the more disturbing additions to the myth involves the idea that time didn't pass normally inside the aircraft, but something else did. According to these versions, although the passengers appeared unchanged on the outside, something about them felt off. Their stillness wasn't just shock. It was as if they were no longer fully present or aware. Some storytellers go further, suggesting that if anyone had boarded the plane, they might have discovered that the passengers were not conscious at all, or worse, that something had replaced the normal sense of life inside them. There are also eerie claims about the instruments and environment of the plane. Witnesses in the story sometimes describe the aircraft as being covered in a thin layer of dust or haze, despite supposedly just landing. Others say the clocks inside were stuck or spinning erratically, hinting at some kind of disruption to time itself. These details add to the unsettling feeling that the aircraft didn't simply travel through space, but through something far less understood. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the legend is what didn't happen. In nearly every version, no one manages to properly investigate the plane before it disappears again. There's no closure, no explanation, just a brief, terrifying glimpse of something impossible. The idea that the aircraft took off again, carrying whatever mystery or horror it contained, leaves the story open-ended in a way that makes it linger. It's worth being clear, though. These horror elements are purely fictional embellishments built onto an already unverified story. There's no real evidence any of these events occurred, but the reason they persist is because they tap into deep, universal fears. The fear of time slipping away, of being trapped in something unknowable, and of encountering something that looks human but isn't quite right. Flight 914 never founded. Maybe Flight 914 dissolved in air or may be eaten by Earth. Flight 914. A question for you. What do you think that Flight 914 discovered in near future or not?